Good evening. Just a few thoughts for Wednesday night, something to think about. I want to begin with a story about four high school boys that were late to their morning class one day, and they went into the classroom and solemnly told their teachers that they were all late due to a flat tire. Who'd have figured? Well, a sympathetic teacher smiled and told them that it was really too bad that they'd missed a pop quiz, and she was going to let them make it up, but she asked them to do one thing for her. She put them in the four corners of the room, gave each one a piece of paper, and said if you could pass, that they could take the quiz if they could ask or answer this one question. Which tire was flat? Well, as you can imagine, there were four answers from all four corners because it obviously wasn't honest. Which tire was flat? How important is it that we tell the truth? Well, it's kind of a dumb question, isn't it? You think about the importance of telling the truth in our daily lives, and yet lying and telling something that's untruth or half-truth has become, in a lot of ways, a part of our age, a part of our culture. You think about the Sermon on the Mount and all of those practical words that Jesus gave us in Matthew 5 and 6 and 7. Well, I'm taken to Matthew chapter 5 and verse 37. He's already talked about murder and marriage and adultery, and now keeping your word. And he says all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one. Wow, those are strong words if you think about it. Say yes or no. Yours may say, may your yes be yes, or your no be no. In other words, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Why do we stretch the truth in our society? Why do we have this tendency to give false news or to lie on times? Sometimes it's so that we'll look better, be something that we're not. You may remember the newspapers several years ago. I think it was several years ago, 9 years ago, in September of 2011. There was an article about a 17-year-old who in Florida was facing felony charges. Maybe some of you saw that movie Catch Me If You Can, where Leonardo DiCaprio played a pilot, and he was never trained as a pilot, and yet he did it for a long, long time. Well, Matthew Scheid was arrested because he did something similar. He impersonated a physician's assistant in Florida in a clinic for 5 days. Wow. According to the police, the untrained teen spent time in the operating room, in the emergency room. He conducted exams. He provided patient care, and he even accessed restricted information for the patients that this doctor had. Well, it was all on a false pretense. He was never trained. It was all a lie. Several years ago, I visited a castle with a friend in southern Germany, and we climbed up this long road that went up to the top of this castle, sitting on the top of this little mountain. And there were a bunch of cannons, huge cannons, out in front of this castle, as there often are. And in this particular day, there were a bunch of kids playing on those cannons. They were straddling those cannons, and they were going back and forth and playing like it was the old times. And they were playing the old game that a lot of us played. Well, my dad's better than your dad. And this one little kid sat quietly on that cannon that was built in the 1700s, by the way. But he quietly sat on that cannon and listened to those kids go back and forth, telling how great their dads were, and finally said, well, my dad built this cannon. He was dead serious. My dad built the cannons. Sometimes we lie or we stretch the truth in order that we might look better, or that people will look at us in a certain way. Sometimes we do it to mislead. Sometimes we do it downright deceptively, to cheat, or to try to be something or get people to believe something that's not true. The Jewish people had their problems with oaths and with oath keeping. And what I've read, to swear by anything less than God himself, you might be expected to break that promise. I promise by heaven, or I promise by the temple, or by the city of Jerusalem. But Jesus says, if you want to be my people, if you want to be part of the kingdom that I'm a part of, you've got to be people of your word. You've got to be people who are ready to tell the truth, who are expected to tell the truth. I know you've heard that word integrity, and I know we've even talked about it in the last month. But a good definition of integrity, one person said, was doing what is right even when no one's looking. Even when you don't think it's going to have a great effect, it's not going to hurt anybody. Twist the truth a little. Well, that's not integrity. Nobody saw me steal that tool that I put in my pocket, or, what would you do? In fact, I saw this book of questions one time, and one of the questions in there was, how would you respond if you were in a parking garage where there was nobody else there? We don't have a lot of parking garages around Abilene, Texas, but maybe you've been in a big city and you've been in a parking garage and you back out and you hit someone else's car. What do? You don't look around real quick and you don't see anybody. What do? Do you drive on? You stop, write a note, give your information, contact information? What would be the honest thing to do? Well, I read about one time when a guy backed out of his parking spot and into the door of a nice Porsche, and he got out and he saw that there were people around watching, so he got a piece of paper and he acted like he was writing, and he said, I backed into your car and there are a lot of people standing around thinking that I'm going to write you a note with my information, but I'm really sorry I hit your car, but I'm not going to give you my information. Thank you and goodbye. Well, it had the image of something of integrity, but it was a lie. People who have that characteristic can't be trusted. They can't be trusted in the family. They can't be trusted in their jobs. They just cannot be trusted. Jesus says, let your yes be a yes. 100% yes, and your no be 100% no, and anything else is from the evil one. He says, in other words, it's wrong. It's wrong. Well, I know this is a lot of stories, but one last story. Two wealthy brothers were members of a church, and they used their money for influence, bad influence, so that they could gain more contracts and do all of that. Well, there was a new preacher in town, and the church was growing, and they needed a new building, and one of the brothers died. And the day before the funeral, the other brother came to the preacher with an envelope. And he said, check in the envelope. There's probably enough money to pay for the new building. All I ask is that tomorrow at the funeral, you tell everybody that my brother was a saint. And he said, okay, I'll do what you ask. And he went and deposited the money in the bank. Next day was the funeral. And the preacher got up and did his normal stuff. And then at the end of it, he said, this man who died was a dishonest sinner. He was evil. He cheated on his wife. He did bad business. He was a hypocrite. But in comparison to his brother, he was a saint. Well, funny story to illustrate just how devastating lying and untruth can be. Telling the truth, of course, can be painful. A few weeks ago, I mentioned a passage in Psalm 15 that I called Climbing Up Integrity Mountain. And I just want to read the first few verses of that, the first 4 verses of that as we close. Psalm 15, verses 1 through 4. Lord, it says, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? Well, then he answers his own question in verse 2. He says, the one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor and casts no slur on others, who despises a vile person but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps an oath even when it hurts and does not change their mind. People, brothers and sisters, in a time when lying is becoming everyday, when saying bad things, slandering other people, other political parties, other politicians that we don't care for or like, either with words or on Facebook or Twitter or whatever or wherever, those are not things that show Christian integrity, are they? They're not things that show that we're a truthful people who believes in the words of Jesus. But we can know that when we do right, we're influencing the world for good in our little way, but we're doing it nonetheless. Thank you.